Objectives are: we should understand the characteristic of hepatitis B virus, understand how it replicates, its genotype distribution and the clinical significance of these genotypes, define serological and immunological markers of hepatitis B infections. Hepatitis D virus is an enveloped virus. It's a member of adenoviride family, more infected than HIV, found in the body secretions and blood. It can even survive in dry blood for longer than 1 week. This is the hepatitis B virus genome, and you can see it's enveloped partially. It's a small size DNA virus. It's a very small size DNA virus. In fact, it's just 42 nanomicrons, and it has got 4 overlapping overreading frames, which you can see that it has got uh, these 4 uh, envelopes, and it has got reverse transcriptase DNA polymerase domain, and it encodes 4 sets of protein. That is surface antigen, which is being produced from these envelopes, these core antigens and polymerases, and protein X, which is a multifactorial protein. Now you can see that this is a hepatitis B viron, which binds to the hepatocyte receptors, and the receptor is known as sodium taurocholate co-transporting polypeptide, and then it is internalized. In the nucleus genome, it forms a covalently closed circular DNA, and then it translates of viral messenger RNA to proteins in cytoplasm. Here you can see that it is just opened, and the messenger RNA is now going to encode proteins, as we have talked at surface antigen, E antigen, protein X, and core antigen. It incorporates into the endoplasmic reticulum, and then there is a reverse transcription of RNA. Like HIV, hepatitis B is also having reverse transcription. So the RNA can form a DNA. Unfortunately, there is no proofreading. So in this process, there are so many quasi-species are produced. From the endoplasmic reticulum, it has been uh, budding and secretion, and then the packaging is done in the Golgi apparatus, and it is released through the Golgi apparatus or some other process. Simultaneously, some of the genomic material you can see here, it goes back to the nucleus, and it is in fact replicating the intranuclear covalently closed circular DNA. That is the geographical distribution of hepatitis B virus, and if you can read these type of map, this is India and this is Pakistan. Mostly we are nearly 70 to 80% of us having D, but we do have got some other as well. There were previously 8 genotypes, but 2 recently has been incorporated, I and J, making the total number of 10. What is the impact of these genotypes? You can see the hepatitis B genotype C is more frequently associated with severe liver disease and hepatocellular carcinoma as compared to those patients who have got genotype B. The genotype B is associated with seroconversion from hepatitis B E antigen to its antibody at the younger age as compared to C. Higher rates of antiviral response and E antigen loss is seen in those patients who have got genotype A and B and treated with pegylated interferon as compared to the group who are having genotype D and C. Genotype A, D, and E predominates hepatitis genotype B in Africa. A account for 90% of cases in southern, eastern, and central Africa. You should keep in mind that sub-Saharan Africa comprises of nearly 46 countries and has got the highest prevalence of disease in the world. So mean age of those infected with genotype A is 6.5 years, younger than those with non-A, more risk of hepatocellular carcinoma, and these patients, they have got better response to the interferon. Genotype T, which is more prevalent in our country, it has got reduced response rate to interferon, and it is having an acute infection. There are more chances of acute liver failure. And is more common in West Africa. In genotype D, A, F, and in B, higher rates of E antigen conversion is seen. This is again a graph, which is it's a table which is showing clinical outcomes comparing genotype B and C, and you can see the presence of E antigen is low in genotype B as compared to C. The spontaneous E antigen seroconversion is late in C as compared to B. Histological activity on biopsy is high in C. Compared to progression of cirrhosis, those patients of hepatitis B having a genotype C, they have got high progression to cirrhosis. Risk of hepatocellular carcinoma is also high in genotype C, and response to nucleotide is more or less similar in nearly all the genotypes. What are the serological markers? Hepatitis B surface antigen. It was identified way back in 1970s by Bloomberg, and there was a blood transfusion recipient, and aborigine is Australian, and that's why it was known as Australia antigen. It was the first serological marker, and infection is considered chronic if it persists greater than 6 months. It is indicative of number of infected hepatocytes. E antigen is indicative of active replication of virus, and those patients who are E antigen positive are highly infected. There's a nucleocapsid antigen, and absent in pre-core or basal core promoter mutations. Antibodies to surface antigen, they could highlight that perhaps the patient has recovered and developed an immunity. And those people like us who have got hepatitis B vaccination, we have got these antibodies in our blood, which is conferring immunity to us for this disease. Antibody to E antigen indicates that virus is no longer replicating. It is present in hepatitis B E antigen negative disease. Hepatitis B core antibody, there are IgG, which points towards the past exposure, and IgM, which indicate acute infection as well as the replication. This table is showing some immunological markers with the chronic hepatitis B infection stages. You can see that hepatitis B surface antigen is present in immune tolerant state, and immune clearance stage it's also present, and in immune control stage it is also present. Before going further, immune tolerant stage is basically hepatitis B E antigen positive. These patients have got high hepatitis B virus DNA, as you can see. The ALT is usually normal, and this is the stage in which there is a minimal necroinflammation. So the immune response is also not aggressive, and It's unusual for spontaneous hepatitis B-E antigen loss. While in cases of immune clearance, the immune system recognizes hepatitis B virus and starts to clear it. In these cases, the ALT is typically high, and these are the people who have got more chances of developing liver fibrosis. It may last for weeks to years, and it ends up with the clear seroconversion of hepatitis B-E antigen. In immune escape stage, the virus try to avoid immune system. So these are the patient whose E antigen is negative, as you can see, and they have got antibody, and suddenly their DNA level starts soaring up because of the E antigen. There is a genetical mutation, and so E antigen is not there. The immune system cannot recognize, and the DNA is increasing. And these are the patients who have got elevated ALT. Immune control stage is when there is a E antigen is lost, and patient enters into an immune control phase. There is a very low undetectable hepatitis B virus DNA. The ALT is usually normal, and in this stage the fibrosis is minimal. So these are the 4 stages which usually come. Sometime we come across with the patient, and these patients, when we do a clinical examination, they look like a patient with a chronic hepatitis. Surface antigen or viral marker, as is frequently known, is negative. E antigen is negative, and when we do a PCR, usually it shows a very low level or undetectable level. So in these cases, when we send for a core antibody, we get a core antibody IgG, and these are the patients who have got occult hepatitis B. They are not very frequent, but yes, they do come across in our clinical practice. So in this module, we have concluded that hepatitis B virus is a hepatotropic oncogenic virus. Sodium taurocolate co-transporting polypeptide is the newly identified hepatocyte receptor for the hepatitis B virus. Its replication is through the covalently closed circular DNA, which is continuously replenished and intercalated into the hepatocyte genome, leading to the chronicity. And that is the reason, this is the reason that the cure to hepatitis B is very difficult. Genotype and subgenotype have got their own characteristics, and they determine the risk of chronicity, they determine the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma and the therapeutic response to interferon. Now we are going to talk about the assessment of liver disease stages and hepatitis B virus treatment. So these are our learning objectives. The spectrum of disease. We got an acute infection in adult, most of them it's been clear. In children, most of them they go into the chronic state. In between, around 20 to 50% they go into the chronic state. Some of them they can progress to fatal progressive liver failure. Some of them can develop hepatocellular carcinoma, they can expire. Some of them they can develop cirrhosis of liver, and again they can develop a decompensated cirrhosis and death and malignancy. A small number of patients who have got acute hepatitis B can present with a permanent hepatic failure in medical emergencies. This is the same which we have talked about: the immune tolerant phase, the immune active phase, the immune control phase, and immune escape phase. We have talked about. Now, what are the factors which are influencing a natural disease? It's definitely hepatitis B virus load, virulence, E status, mutations, and genotype, comorbidities like diabetes mellitus. Habit of using alcohol. You must remember that alcohol is metabolized in the liver. So if you are taking alcohol, it is going to be metabolized in the liver at the expense of your hepatocytes. If there is an iron overload, it can also damage the liver. Age of infection, as the previous slide has shown, gender. Male are more prone to develop chronic hepatitis as compared to the female. And then the immune response and some co-infections, like if patient has got other viral infections, definitely the treatment is difficult. This was the study done years ago, and it was basically to do the risk evaluation and the viral load and its association to the liver disease. And it has clearly shown that those patients who have got high viral load are more prone to develop hepatocellular carcinoma. Those patients who have got high viral load are more prone to develop cirrhosis of liver. So this gave us an insight that if we keep the viral load to the minimum level, the chances of developing hepatocellular carcinoma, the chances of developing cirrhosis of liver are at very low levels. So this study has become a therapeutic objective of practicing physicians, that we will try to keep the viral load to the level minimum possible or indetectable, so that our patient should not develop hepatocellular carcinoma and cirrhosis of liver. How we are going to assess the liver disease? You may have been taught, but let's review. Liver biopsy. It has been considered a gold standard, and there is METAVAR score, or nowadays it's a international histological scale which is being used to divide uh, hepatocyte, whether they are having no fibrosis to cirrhosis of liver. It is costly, it is invasive, associated with pain, bleeding, pneumothorax, and the disease may not be homogeneously involving the liver, so the tissue may not be representative. So there are few questions about this, although it's a gold standard. So people thought about blood or serum based tests such as APRI, FIB4, FibroTest, transient elastography, FibroScan. The use of accurate and validated non-invasive tests in the resource-limited settings will help with optimal selection of person with chronic hepatitis for antiviral therapy, but there are very few validated studies from the sub-Saharan Africa. APRI and FIB4, these are indirect markers of fibrosis using ALT, AST, and platelet. They are readily available in low or middle income countries. They are less costly and no expertise is required for interpretation. You can do it in an outpatient settings. Fibro tests are patented commercial tests. They are expensive and they are being done in accredited laboratories, not available everywhere. These non-invasive tests are not validated to assess all the stage of fibrosis. So it's a bit difficult to interpret, but they can help. Now you can see APRI is basically AST, which is the measured AST, divided by the upper limit of normal of the laboratory from where this investigation has been done, multiplied by 100, divided by the platelet count of the patient. Now it is validated for the diagnosis and significant fibrosis greater than F2 and cirrhosis of liver. APRI has got two cutoff, a lower cutoff 0.5 and upper cutoff 1.5. So if a APRI is less than 0.5, it's a strong indicator that there is very little or no fibrosis. If APRI is more than 1.5, it's a strong indicator of cirrhosis. FIB4 is age in years multiplied by AST divided by the platelet count multiplied by ALT. It is validated for the diagnosis of significant fibrosis greater than F3 but not cirrhosis. So it has got a cutoff less than 1.45, which is negative predictor value for the advanced liver fibrosis, and greater than 3.25, a predictor for uh, advanced fibrosis. So there is optimal cutoff values that correlate with the specific stages of the disease. As I have already showed that in APRI it is lower cutoff is 0.5 and upper cutoff is 1.5, and in FIB4 it has a lower cutoff 1.45 and upper cutoff of 3.25. So if high cutoff, it has very few positive, false positive results. Low cutoff, very few false negative results. In those patients where we get an intermediate value, the follow-up and repeated testing and perhaps help from other investigation can help the clinician in assessing the stage of the disease. Another modality is the transient elastography, which is known as FibroScan. It is performed with an ultrasound machine, specially having programmed to devise the impedance while passing through the liver. It is costly, it requires operator training, and uh, significant fibrosis can be detected, as well as cirrhosis can also be detected in these patients. So while assessing the stage of a disease, we can use APRI and FIB4. FibroTest is inexpensive, not easily available, and FibroScan is also very expensive or not easily available. So in those places where these facilities are available, these investigations or uh, these calculations can be incorporated to assess the stage of the disease in a patient who is suffering with chronic hepatitis B. So assessment of non-invasive test may be impacted by intercurrent diseases that can vastly increase or decrease the score. Alcohol intake, use of other traditional medicine which can increase the liver enzymes, malaria or HIV or some other hematological diseases, acute hepatitis, congestive cardiac failure leading to the hepatic congestion, and sometimes even if a patient has taken a big heavy meal, which can increase liver stiffness because there is increased portal circulation to that organ. What are the guidelines of WHO we are following? FibroScan and APRI, most useful test for assessing the cirrhosis in low income groups. A predictive positive value for detection of cirrhosis were low for all non-invasive investigation, particularly in APRI. Very limited evaluation in sub-Saharan Africa, which is a very large population of the world having the disease. FIB4 not considered or recommended, but we are using it. It's a good tool, and we are using it in our patients just to have some insight about the disease, because very few patients are willing for a liver biopsy. But it can not be validated for cirrhosis, yes, it can tell us about fibrosis. So the current treatment of chronic hepatitis is defined, chronic hepatitis B is defined as the persistence of hepatitis B surface antigen for greater than 6 months, and the major advancement in therapeutic options, we have got two options, that is interferon or nucleoside and nucleotide analog therapy. Understanding the huge natural history and the phase of chronic infection is important in guiding the treatment. Cure is difficult, and as it is dependent on the eradication of the hepatic intracellular hepatitis B virus cccDNA. So positive predictive value of all non-invasive tests for the diagnosis of cirrhosis is low. Many cases of cirrhosis will be missed if we are using only non-invasive. It's important to incorporate a non-invasive and assessment along with the clinical criteria and other lab criteria to identify those in need. APRI is the WHO preferred non-invasive investigation. Blood test needs to calculate APRI are routinely available, each patient nearly having these tests. So APRI single high cutoff greater than 2 for identifying adult with fibrosis and in need of antivirals. Like we have said that 1.5 and above the patient is having uh, cirrhosis. What are the first line treatment for the, and these are the learning objectives. What are the goal of treatment of hepatitis B? It's to prevention of long-term complications such as cirrhosis of liver, hepatic failure, and hepatocellular carcinoma. The goals continue. Difficult to measure these clinical outcomes. Biochemical is normalization of serum ALT, virological durable suppression of undetectable hepatitis B virus DNA, durable hepatitis B antigen loss or seroconversion to anti-hepatitis B antibody, durable hepatitis B surface antigen loss or seroconversion to anti-hepatitis B surface antibody status. Histologically, there is decrease in the necroinflammatory scores and possibly regression of fibrosis on liver biopsy. So these are the goal or objectives for treating any patient who have got chronic hepatitis. Hepatitis B surface antigen clearance is an ideal endpoint. Aim to reduce number of infected hepatocytes and reduce hepatitis B viral replication. Hepatitis B surface antigen serum level reflects transcriptionally active cccDNA. Hepatitis B surface antigen serum level lowest in immune control phase. We have talked about it. Hepatitis B surface antigen clearance is associated with reduced incidence of fibrosis, reduced incidence of hepatocellular carcinoma, improved survival and quality of life. Cure is dependent on eradication of the covalently closed circular DNA. However, if a patient surface antigen clearance is achieved, it is closest to cure in chronic hepatitis B virus. The treatment strategies for the chronic hepatitis B, interferon-based therapies. What are the benefit? Dual antiviral and immunomodulatory activity. It has got a defined course. We give it for a specific period of time. And the treatment, off treatment immune control, you can see there is a sustained off treatment immune. We will talk about it. What is this sustained off treatment immune control? That is surface antigen positive, then E antigens, that hepatitis B DNA less than 200, and the success rate was not very significant, between 30 to 50. When we compare it with the present regime, we have got the nucleotides and nucleoside analogs. They have got antiviral activity. It is, the time is difficult to define in these patients. It is because they do not have any effect on the cccDNA. So we sometimes we have to use for a very prolonged period of time, maybe indefinitely. Aim is to suppress the virus load maintained through continuous antiviral therapy, suppress of replication to undetectable levels so that there should be no resistance against these medications. Standard interferon, not nowadays available, pegylated interferon, lamivudine, telpivodine, entecavir, tenofovir, and plus minus emtricitabine. In sub-Saharan Africa, lamivudine and tenofovir is widely available, as there is a lot of patients who have got HIV, and not always accessible for treatment of hepatitis B virus monoinfection. Entecavir is not easily available in sub-Saharan Africa. Now, this is a table which you can see uh, hepatitis B virus DNA undetectable after 1 year. And these are the medicine, lamivudine, adafovir, talbivudine. You can see entecavir 67, tenofovir 76, and pegylated interferon 25%. ALT normalization after 1 year, again 68%, 68%, 39%. Histological improvement 72%, 74%. Hepatitis B is seroconversion 1 year, then after 2 years, 8 years you can see tenofovir we have got. We don't have any studies for entecavir. And you can see after 3 years, some of them are still having there's a loss of hepatitis B surface antigen. So the cure you can see is not significant in any of the group. We do definitely need good medication to achieve a cure which can clear the cccDNA of hepatitis B virus. Undetectable hepatitis B virus DNA, entecavir, tenofovir, pegylated interferon, loss of surface antigen, not very significant, normalization of ALT, histological improvement. So these three parameters which we do achieve with these medications, they fulfill our goal of keeping the viral load to the liver, where it may not be a detectable, and hence the patient may not develop cirrhosis or hepatocellular carcinoma. So factors which are predictive of a good response is a genotype ARB as compared to CRD. Unfortunately, we have more D than A and B. Low viral load, high ALT baseline, and then high activity score on biopsy, which will show that these patients will be responding to interferon. The specific patient demography, younger age group, younger women, patient preference, no co-infections, and concomitant hepatitis and D virus, they are going to influence interferon therapy. What are the factors which are associated with choosing nucleotides or nucleoside-based analogs as an initial therapy? Favorable predictor of response is high ALT, low hepatitis B virus DNA, and you can give it in old patient. Patient preferences there, concomitant HIV infection, no hepatitis C or cirrhosis. So these are the favorable predictables and some things we have to consider while giving this treatment. What is the best hepatitis B virus treatment in our setting? Interferon has been uh, uh, considered good, but interferon has got its limitation. There is a long immune tolerant phase in sub-Saharan patient, high hepatitis B virus DNA levels, and often minimum necroinflammation. Liver biopsy assessment is advisable, and most of the patients they refused. Expensive and close monitoring, because we need repeated blood investigation in those patients who have got interferon. Majority of hepatitis B virus treatment candidates in sub-Saharan Africa are not suitable for interferon-based regime. 21 pairwise comparison of randomized control trial comprising nearly 5,000 hepatitis B antigen positive patients were not given nucleoside, and 16 trials. So tenofovir monotherapy has highest probability of achieving undetectable hepatitis B virus DNA at the end of 1 year of treatment. Entecavir monotherapy, you can see that it is definitely a bit low as compared to uh, tenofovir. Other antiviral therapies have low probability of achieving this outcome. Of developing hepatocellular carcinoma is also low in tenofovir, and genotypic resistance is not seen in tenofovir. So dosage of tenofovir is 300 milligram once a day. Tenofovir, when combined with the amtericetabine, you give tenofovir of 245 milligram, and amtericetabine in 200 milligram. Entecavir we give 0.5 milligram. It's easily available in our hospital as well, and in with decompensated cases we give 1 milligram. In children above 12, the dosage is same, while in cases of entecavir, this is the table which is dependent upon the body weight. Assess severity of a chronic liver disease, assess the level of viral replication, that is hepatitis B virus DNA, its viral load, hepatitis E antigen, and hepatitis B E antibodies. Assessment of presence of comorbidities, lifestyle counseling, NASH को भी ध्यान में रखें. You should consider about NASH. You should ask if they are taking alcohol, not to take it. Hepatitis B surface antigen screening with hepatitis B vaccination to non-immune family members and sexual partners. When you are counseling your patient, you have to tell them indication of treatment, benefit and side effects of treatment, need for and willingness to commit to long-term treatment. We do face this problem because when these patients they come from their family physicians, the family physician are telling them to take this treatment for 6 months and everything is going to be fine. When they come to us in our specialized clinic and we tell them that you may be needing it for a very long period of time, then they are bewildered. They said our family physician has said that you take it for a 6 month and everything will be fine, and now you are telling us that it will be a long treatment. So they develop questions. So this is important for all the doctors who are working, whether as a family physician or as a consultant, that they should keep themselves well informed for the duration of the treatment, and they should convey the message clearly to their patient. This is the problem with our family physicians, that just to keep their practice running, they do not convey full knowledge to their patient. Importance of full adherence of treatment is going to increase the efficacy of treatment, and if you are not going to adhere, kabhi li, kabhi neeli, it's going to increase the drug resistance, it will going to progression of the disease. You can be having more chances of acute liver failure, and definitely cost is an important factor. Nucleoside analogs are given, and nephrotoxicity has to be assessed because the serum creatinine level, glomerulofiltration rate, and urine analysis is important before starting the treatment. Risk factor for renal dysfunction: the patient has got decompensated cirrhosis, creatinine clearance is less than 50, poorly controlled hypertension and diabetes. These two diseases, hypertension and diabetes, they are going to be present with so many other clinical conditions. So the major objective in achieving the goal, it is important to control blood pressure and to control diabetes. Whenever our patient comes with hypertension, we ask, do you take treatment? And they will give you a very patent response. When we feel headache, when we feel that our blood pressure is high, we take medicine. And this is sometimes they say that is been conveyed to them by their family physicians. So again, I will emphasize that those big doctors who are going to treat in the community, they must tell or inform their patient that in hypertension, in diabetes, you are not going to skip the dose until and unless advised by your treating physician. Proteinuria, active glomerulonephritis, due to some other reason, a patient may be having a solid organ transplant, old age, BMI less than 18.5 or a body weight less than 50, boosted protease inhibitor for HIV, concomitant nephrotoxic drug, especially those non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, which has been just taken as over-the-counter drug. They have got a very high potential of damaging the kidneys. The nephrotoxicity, you will assess the renal function before initiation in those patients who have got solid organ transplant, old age, and uh, this same slide. Long-term therapy, hepatitis B virus DNA every 6 to 12 months, hepatitis B surface antigen and E antigen every 6 to 12 months, AST, ALT for F3 annually, and renal function annually, more frequently if they have got risk factor like diabetes and hypertension. Ask them to adhere to the therapy. Monitoring for hepatocellular carcinoma, so we do an alpha fetoprotein, which is a tumor marker, and serological assessment of the liver every 6 to 12 months. When to stop? It's a difficult question, not a clear-cut answer. In the case of cirrhosis, the objective is not uh, a cure. It is the objective is to keep this patient free from developing hepatocellular carcinoma. So whatever the level of viral load, we have to continue with the therapy. Like if a patient is not having cirrhosis, hepatitis B E antigen positive patient, consider stopping treatment if E antigen is lost, seroconversion to antibody of E antigen, at least 1 year of treatment, persistently normal ALT, and persistently undetectable hepatitis B virus gene. At least 20% of these patients, they can have a relapse. In patients who are E antigen negative, we don't know when to stop, as we don't have any marker. The E antigen, which is our marker for stopping treatment, is not present in these patients. So it's a difficult decision, maybe a lifelong. So cure is dependent on the eradication of intranuclear hepatitis B virus covalently closed circular DNA. Hepatitis B surface antigen clearance is the closest to cure in chronic hepatitis B. Tenofovir, entecavir, and pegylated interferon are preferred first-line drugs. Third generation mAbs have high efficacy, very low rate of resistance, and excellent safety record, but therapy is potentially lifelong. Pegylated interferon offer a finite therapy, chances of cure through dual antiviral and immunomodulatory action. Majority of treatment candidates in sub-Saharan Africa are not suitable for interferon-based therapies.